Gets me every time, Lisa. Every time. Last year, there was a sermon that the Reverend Dr. Robin Tanner.
Hey.
More on that later. Last year, there was a sermon that Robin delivered that really changed me. In it, she talked about the effects of the Industrial Revolution and questioned whether or not we believe our lives have value beyond our ability to produce. Or at least that's what I heard. I might not have been about that at all, but that's what I heard. So what you should know about me is that my family has always had a very strong work ethic. After all, as I've shared with you on countless times, my grandmother has a framed needlepoint on her wall that says, "To rest is to rust." We do laugh about it, we talk about it all the time, but let me be clear, we live as if it is the truth. She turns 90 on Monday and still works 2 jobs. Very proud of that fact. Work is absolutely at the center of our identities and our purpose. Our calling is to work. It is to produce. But what value, I wondered, do our lives have when we stop producing? Who are we then? In our community groups this month, our small group ministry, we engaged in the checklist of privilege that Peggy McIntosh wrote first in her 1988 essay, White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. It asked participants to consider the many different privileges they currently enjoy. Race, yes, and also class, ability, gender, citizenship, just to name a few. One of our facilitators shared with me this week that she has participated in Peggy McIntosh's checklist countless times throughout her life, and that this was the first time she realized how invisible you can feel around age. How many of us, she wondered, start to feel invisible as we age because we are no longer working? Or maybe we are still working, but everything around us is changing so quickly that our way of working, our way of producing, our way of being is no longer valued. I have heard that too, spoken in our halls. This hit home for me in particular. I remember how much I loved the novel Still Alice. It changed my perspective on life and aging and on the mind. Written by neuroscientist Lisa Genova, you enter the inner world of an accomplished woman who is living with early onset Alzheimer's. From the very beginning of her diagnosis, Alice decides that when she cannot remember the answers to 5 questions, very basic, that she will end her life. Except that's not what happens. And you discover that her life has value way after she stops being productive. That her life has value long after she's forgotten her children's names. Because you find she can still experience love, even when she can't say it. This has forever changed the way I will walk down a nursing home hallway. Yesterday, as I sat with my dad, he who cannot sit still on his Alzheimer's floor, walking around, I noticed how easily it would have been to walk by all of the residents on the floor who are staring blankly off into space. But I have been taking good lessons from the caregivers there. I have learned their names, the names of the patients. I have learned to say hello, to call them by name, to touch a shoulder, to touch a hand. And there, in that moment, I learned to see them. I learned to value them. And I see that in response, often they smile. I have learned that life endures long after our brain goes, long after we can offer the world any produce. And I realize in those moments, from the moment that Reverend Robin talked about that I can no longer worship at the altar of work. Because the day is coming when I will either hit a certain irrelevant age, or a doctor will give me a diagnosis, or maybe I'll just get tired. I'll no longer be a worker, no longer able to produce. I will just be me. And I really wonder, is that okay? And I realized that I have to prepare for that moment now. And I want to tell you that one of the things I hear from all of you is a great longing to live life differently. Journalist and writer Pico Iyer spent his early life traveling the globe. By the age of 30, he had racked up over 1 million miles on a single United States airline. Back then, he noticed that when he was talking about the different places that he was traveling, that people's eyes would light up. That is not true today. People's eyes light up now when he talks about going nowhere or going offline. He says, I think a lot of us have this sense that we are living at the speed of light because the machines around us that we use ask us to work at that speed. And then he says, we've lost the ability to live at the speed of life. Pico Iyer had a squash and a squeeze moment the first time he went to a Benedictine monastery. After his family home was literally burned to the ground, he lost everything. And a friend said to him, you should go visit that Catholic hermitage. And I want to share with you his description of what it was like to arrive there. And I want you to take this moment, use your imagination, listen to his words, and try to imagine yourself as Pico Iyer and going to this Catholic hermitage. He writes, I drove north along the coast following the sea. Can you see it? The road got narrower and narrower, and then I came to an even narrower, barely paved road that snaked up the mountain for 2 miles. I got out of my car at this monastery, and the air was pulsing. It was very silent, but really the silence wasn't the absence of noise. It was almost the presence of these transparent walls that I think that the monks worked very, very hard to make available to us in the world. Now imagine Pico stepping into a little room where he was going to stay. He says it was simple. There was a bed and a long desk, and above the desk, a long picture window. Outside it was a walled garden with a chair. And beyond that, just this great blue expanse of the Pacific Ocean. Are you there yet? Somehow, almost immediately, it was as if a huge heaviness fell away from me, and the lens cap came off my eyes. And suddenly I was seeing everything with great immediacy. And it was almost as if the little Pico had disappeared and the whole world came into me instead. I remember a blue jay suddenly alighted on the fence outside my window, and I watched it, rapt, as if it was the most miraculous thing that had ever happened. The bells began ringing above, and it felt like they were ringing inside me. And then when the darkness fell, I just walked along the monastery road under the stars, watching the taillights of cars disappear around the headlands to the south. And really, almost instantaneously, I felt like I'd stepped into a richer, deeper, life, a real life that I had forgotten had existed. Pico Iyer changed the way he saw life. He says it's like a lens cap coming off his eyes. He changed his perception without a hen and a pig and a cow. Now, and a goat, don't forget the goat, of course. Now, when I read this, I wondered actually if I should read it to you. Because so often when you read a description like this in a sermon, everybody, I can see it in your eyes, like people's task lists just come right up in their head. You're like, oh yeah, and then I gotta do that. When is she done talking? Because it takes practice, and one of the things I learned in reading Pico Iyer is that I have become addicted to my task list. It is a great day when I never complete it, but it feels like I have accomplished something. And so it's funny to me that since I have announced going on sabbatical, and let me be clear, I was lovingly asked to go because everyone could see that I needed it, but me. And so I have been asked again and again, so what are you going to do on this sabbatical? And I have to tell you, the words sort of choke in my throat because I feel so compelled to give a productive answer. I really want to tell you, like, I'm going to write that book. So you'll feel like I'm doing something good with my time, or I'm going to research, I'm going to go out and serve, I'm going to take a pilgrimage. And so some of you might have seen my face of like, oh. I am going to practice stillness. That's what I say. And sometimes people say to me, whoa, are you going to a silent retreat center? No, I'm going nowhere. In fact, hilariously, one of our members, Rosemary, was asking me what I was going to do, and I was feeling uncomfortable. So I was like, well, I've been reading Pico Iyer, and I feel like I'm going to study Pico Iyer. And she had me going to Japan to study with Pico Iyer. She was telling people that's what I was doing, and so I didn't tell her she was wrong. And I will say that someone after first service told me to have fun in Japan. So there we are. Going nowhere is another Pico Iyer concept. Where is nowhere? Iyer admits that it is probably the wilderness. After all, we are living through the season of Lent, marking Jesus' 40 days in the wilderness. Theologian Frederick Buechner says, after being baptized by John in the River Jordan, thank you for that song, Misa, the River Jordan, Jesus went off alone into the wilderness where he spent 40 days asking himself the question, what it meant to be Jesus. During Lent, Christians are supposed to ask one way or another what it means to be themselves. Who are we? And who are we if we are not doing something? Pico Iyer reminds us that meaning does not occur typically in the midst of an experience because we are too close to it at the moment. It doesn't make sense to us just yet, that in fact we need time away from the doing in order to make sense of it all. That's why we come together on Sundays, to try to craft a little bit of time and space that is sacred where we can make meaning. And this became true for me, especially this past Wednesday. Throughout the month of March, I have been teaching or leading really an ambiguous loss workshop. And there, a small group of us on Wednesday afternoons have been talking about the losses in our lives, and the ones especially that it's hard to have closure on. And we begin the session by asking the question, what do you let go of in order to be here, and what do you hope to claim? And inevitably, the things that we are letting go of are all the things that we have to get done in order to create a little bit of sacred time to find meaning. And in this instance, What does the loss mean to us? It is in creating that sacred time and place, removing from the immediacy of our lives, where we can ask that question. One of the participants, Daniel, front row, very nice. Daniel shared with us, and I got his permission, that it was his contemplative practice through breath work that gives him the inner resources to experience real suffering, the suffering of loss that is a part of all of our lives. And it's only when you practice that, when you have the inner resources, that you can actually live with it. So my goal for sabbatical is to simply be still, to go nowhere, so that I can build those inner resources, because I found that I was just moving from thing to thing to thing. And one day it will come. So I do have a few rules. I will take off this watch and not get it out until June 1st. I am going to turn off my phone. I will look at it every now and again. But if I don't like you on Facebook, it's not because I don't like you. Ever. I like you. But it's really to bask in a new sense of time and space, because I have lost what it means. And this has meant saying no and no and no again to the thousands of ideas that my mind has come up with. Oh, you should be doing this, and what about this, and you should do that, and what about this? And I continually say no. And hilariously, as it gets closer, I find that everyone is coming to me saying, you know what you really should do on your sabbatical? Which just tells me that all of you need a sabbatical. Because these are your ideas for you to do, and I give you permission. I want to live by the words of Mary Oliver, to walk slowly and to bow often. To embody the writing of Mark Nepo, when feeling urgent, you must slow down. When I feel like I can't sit still, I need more than ever to sit still. The point of gathering stillness, Pico Iyer says, is not to enrich the sanctuary or the mountaintop, but to bring calm into the motion and the commotion of the world. So I want you to really hear me. I am not going to walk away into stillness forever. That's not the point. The point is to learn how to live in the world with that calm inside me. So you better believe that on June 2nd, I will be here. Because my work is here with all of you. And our lives together, means so much to me. So I want to say thank you for this gift. It is hard for me to take, and I so greatly value it. My friends, amen.